How about if I just start at the beginning? you could be honest.
Because you know what? They have the sweat equity that went into that memory that they're making with their friends and family. And that's what's important with us. And that's what the I Am Real World's about.
Well, that's a great question. You know, one of the best things about a spring food plot is you get a second chance if it fails.
Chasing Giants with Don Higgins. Brought to you by buyafarm.com, your source for farm, recreational properties, rural homes, and more. By tapping into Don's years of experience, dedication, and commitment, Chasing Giants focuses on the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails. Now, here is Don and co-host Terry Peer.
Well, welcome everybody. September 7th, Chasing Giants with Don Higgins, brought to you by buyafarm.com. It is episode 29, and deer season is upon us, Don Higgins.
It is for you, Terry. You've been out already in Kentucky, but here in Illinois, I've got to wait about 3 more weeks or so.
3 weeks isn't a long time to wait. I mean, it's anticipation is high, and people are getting ready, and it's just that time of year we've been waiting on.
That's what we live for, and you've already got to hunt a couple times. So,
yep.
How'd that go?
Our season opened up Saturday night, or Saturday morning, I guess, and there have been some absolute giants killed in Kentucky already this year. I know of at least 3 booners that were killed opening day, not too awful far from me. I mean, within an hour and a half drive. One just shed its velvet. He still had the red tint to his horns. The other 2 in velvet. So I mean, there's some whoppers hitting the ground. Really excited that one of the local kids, her family's big hunters. Actually, I used to hunt the property next door to the farm that her family owns. She killed, I think, just over 160-inch. Non-typical, I mean, typical frame, but a lot of junk all over the place with her compound bow. And I think she's maybe 15, 16 years old, was out hunting by herself and stuck one the first night. So that was really cool to see a young girl that's practiced her tail off shooting a bow, you know, killing a ginormous buck. But I know she'll have a hard time catching that one up and beating that one out of the gate. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, weather's been really good here this weekend. We only had highs in like the 80s. I did hunt the first 2 nights. I was able to get out even with my knee. The first night I did get up into a tower blind, even though I'm not supposed to. But then we had wind shift to the south. Let's see. Tonight it was straight out of the south, or maybe floated a little bit to south-southwest. So I did not hunt tonight. So I had 32. I saw 32 deer Saturday night and 3 shooters. Sunday night I passed. I don't know. I sent you a picture of him. He was actually on the hit list at the beginning of the year, and when I saw him in person, I just if you doubt yourself and you have to talk yourself into it, it's probably not a buck to shoot. And he was 2 different times. He was 12 and a half yards from me, and I went ahead and passed him last night, and chasing a really, really good one. With the wind out of the south today, they're coming from the north. They're bedding to the north side of the alfalfa field coming in. I did not hunt. I went and glassed, and they came right out from the north, and we're feeding tonight. So I just need a southwest or a west wind, and I can go in and try to get it done.
Well, that's where discipline comes in. If you'd have went in tonight, you'd have spooked them and it'd been over.
Yeah, I mean, they probably would have never even came, to the field with that many does coming out into the alfalfa, and you've seen this up on your property where you have, higher deer numbers. All it takes is for one of those does to get on the downwind side and start her blowing fit, and you're done for the whole night, and that buck might not ever even get out of his bed.
Yep.
So.
And you might not run it just for that night, but for the next, who knows how long, week or.
So,
longer.
like I said, they came out a little bit later tonight. I will say that. They only came out with maybe 10 minutes of light left because I was actually almost starting to walk back to the truck. And then I saw them come out. They were just a little bit further down the field. But I got a good one. I'm pretty excited about it. He's still in full velvet right now. I don't anticipate him to last long. About half of my bucks have shed already. What about yours up there?
Well, they've started for sure. Actually, one of the better bucks that I've been watching this summer, he shed his velvet before the end of August.
Oh, wow.
I think was it 28th of August? I got a picture of him, and he was shed clean. I mean, there was no velvet hanging on him or anything.
Yeah.
And I got a picture of the same buck last year before September 1st, and he shed before the 1st of September last year as well. So early shedder, but yeah, there's plenty of them that have shed already, and several that haven't too. So,
well, I just going through the process of my knee being hurt, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to hunt normal starting the season, but when you start getting pictures of really good deer, people just get crazy aggressive right out of the gate. And 9 out of 10 of my friends would have gone and tried to hunt that deer tonight because he's come out the same area and fed in the same alfalfa field the same way the last 3 nights. And, we keep talking about discipline, and you keep preaching it, and it's tough to sit back and not hunt when you got that big of a deer, but I still believe that seasons are made or broken with how you hunt, especially if you're an early season hunter.
Yep. It's you can run your season before you really get going. And I've said it many times on this podcast, the biggest mistake most hunters make is they put way too much human intrusion on their properties. If you would have done it tonight, I think you would have busted those bucks out of there, and your odds of killing them would have went way down.
Yeah, we have a buddy of mine down here that it was the wrong wind all weekend for him, and he still hunted on Saturday night, opening night, because he couldn't accept the fact he had to be in a tree on opening night, and hunted the wrong wind, and guess what? He did not see a single buck. And he did not. We talked him into not going back on Sunday night, and he was all fired up because the cell camera showed the buck in there. But I was just like, that buck probably wouldn't have been there if you were there. That's the thing.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, we keep preaching discipline on this podcast, but this weekend was full proof of it. So hopefully, if I can get a west wind, we'll make something happen here early in September. I like killing early season deer. Well,
I got confidence in you. You usually get it done. So
what have you been up to outside of getting plots ready? I'm guessing you're shooting a little bit, aren't you?
Yeah, I've been shooting my bow. I've shifted all my trail cameras from summer food sources to fall rutting locations.
That's kind of a tradition for you on the holiday weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, I got it done a little bit early this year. Well, it seems like the holiday's a little bit later. It's usually around the 3rd or 4th or something. But this past week, I've got everything moved, and so by the time the weekend rolled around, I was done. Had those cameras where they needed to be, and it's kind of a dead month for me, really, because I don't want to put any pressure at all on the properties I hunt. I've got my cameras where I need them to be, so I pretty much stay out. Now, towards the end of the month, I'll be looking for the right conditions to maybe slip in midday, the last couple of days of the month, and check cameras and just get a last-minute idea of what bucks are where. But
right.
For the next couple of weeks, I won't be doing a whole lot, although tomorrow I am going out of state. I got a hot tip today on a buck out of state. I'm not even going to mention the state it's in, but it's a state where I can buy a tag over the counter. And the area I've never been to, never hunted before. But I got a hot tip. I've got pictures of the buck and everything. The guy that told me about it is someone I really trust. And so I'm packing up tomorrow, and I'm headed out of state to hang some cameras and try to get some permission just by knocking on doors. So
Yep.
we'll see how that goes.
Yep. That'll be exciting. You get told no more than you get told yes, but all it takes is one yes, and it could be a big season for you. That's for sure.
Well, this buck is pretty special. I mean, I wouldn't just jump in my truck and drive this far if I didn't trust the person telling me and the buck wasn't something really special.
So do you have pictures of it from this year?
I do, from this summer.
That's awesome.
As well as from last year.
Very cool.
Yeah. I mean, the odds of me, getting everything worked out and getting permission where I need to be and getting this buck on the ground are pretty darn slim. But if I stay home and do nothing, the odds are 0. So
that's exactly right.
Figure I'd give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is, can you acquire a piece of property and then start putting the dots together? So
that's the big thing. It's going to be get permission where I need to.
Yeah.
This guy shared a lot of information with me, and I've been all over Google Earth and Onyx today, looking at landowners, who owns what. And so I've got a game plan. So I'll be knocking on door. I'm taking enough clothes to stay a couple days, and taking some tree stands with me and some cameras, and we'll just see what happens. I may be bringing every bit of it home. Who knows? I may not get permission anywhere, but I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah, like you said, you never know unless you try.
Yep.
So I know Wes Delks came down here. He got some last minute permission to hunt a farm in northern Kentucky, about 30 minutes north of me, and I think both of them ended up being a bust. But hey, nothing would have happened if he would have stayed at home. So he gave it a try, but I don't think anything panned out for him. But can't do anything from your couch. So
that's right.
So fall plots are in. You were telling me a little bit about that. I think you got your fall plots done, just needing a little bit of rain, right?
Yeah, it's dry as can be here, and we got 4 tenths the other day after I planted them, but I planted them in dust, and that little bit we got was about enough to make some of it germinate. But I mean, it's just powder dry. We need an inch of rain in a bad way. We'd get that; those plots would explode. I'm basically trying to get a lot of things done around the farm here, so that once season opens, I don't have to worry about it. Changing oil and all the tractors and skid loader and for ATVs and all that kind of stuff, and getting things done, before winter. Just when season opens October 1st, I don't want anything to get in the way of me getting in a tree. So doing what I can to prevent that.
I know one of the things that's gotten quite a bit of buzz this last week, we're going to talk about my cell camera test here in just a little bit, but you actually posted a picture of a buck that you are either chasing or kind of eyeing as he could be an up-and-comer every day this week. And I know you got a lot of engagement and a lot of people making comments and sharing some stuff. So talk us through a little bit about these bucks that you posted the last few days.
Well, over there, as I was moving cameras and checking those cameras and pulling them off those summer feeding areas the past week, and going through the cards that I pulled, I just got the idea. I ought to just share one buck a day for the next week and see what that does for social media engagement. And so I picked some of the better bucks, more unique bucks that I've got pictures of this summer and posted one a day. And then today I posted a blog that I wrote, and those same bucks that I shared over the past week, I shared more photos of those same bucks, in previous years or maybe different angles, show the racks a little better than what the one picture I'd posted previous. And I think that blog is, I don't know how many, I forget how many the last time I looked, people had looked at it, but it was a couple thousand anyway. So, it's just people get the idea that, I'm hunting one managed farm or a couple of highly managed farms, and that's just totally not the case. These pictures all came from different properties. Every one of them came from a place where I just knocked on a door for permission. None of those photos came from my home farm, and none of them came from a leased farm. They're real world bucks in every sense of the word. And I actually could have shared a lot more than those few that I shared, but
Right.
I just thought it would be interesting to show people that these bucks are not on my place. They're not on a leased property. I'm covering a lot of areas. I mean, this summer I had trail cameras out in 3 different states. I had them out on public land in 2 different states. And here around my home in central Illinois, I had cameras in, I think, 6 different counties. So I'm putting a lot of cameras out there, covering a lot of area.
What I like about you posted the picture every day and kind of gave a little summary of the buck. But what I like about the blog that you put in is it's actually very educational for people that can go in, because some of these bucks you're showing, 3-4 years of history with them, depending on obviously how old it is. A couple of the up and comers, you don't have that many years, but the history of and the small story that you're sharing, there's a lot that can be learned here, and I think it's kind of cool. So if you go to Higgins Outdoors Facebook page, there's a link there, or higginsoutdoors.com, the website. Don has a blog there. One of the really cool stories is a buck on there that both Don and I've actually seen this buck, but Don talked about how he busted up a bunch of his tines last year, and he wasn't on the hit list last year. So he's got his biggest rack ever. What is he, a 7.5-year-old this year?
Yeah, he's 7.5 this year, and hopefully this is last year. Hopefully he makes a mistake this fall and gets an arrow ran through him.
You can let the air out of his sail a little bit. So, but some really cool bucks in here. I think you featured, I believe, 6 bucks, if I'm not mistaken. I read through the blog earlier, but I think there's 6 different bucks on here with different story, and so go check that out. That's pretty cool, with different cell camera pictures of each one of them. So,
yeah. Also, one of those bucks is one of the best 3-year-olds I've ever seen in over 40 years of deer hunting. So, when people see that picture, a lot of people argue with me that he's not 3 years old. But if you've seen all the pictures of him last year, you'd know he was a 2-year-old.
Right.
So he's definitely 3.
Yeah, I mean, when you're going out on a limb and saying this deer is definitely 3, this deer is definitely 4, 7.5. We talked about this in a past episode. This is not a guess. There is a fundamental history that you have with these bucks that have. You're not winging this information when you say how old a buck is. Right.
So, and the buck that you referenced earlier, Terry, the 7.5-year-old, if I get that buck shot on video, the story behind that deer and all some of the interesting sideline stories is going to be something to see for sure.
Yeah, that one's going to be cool. I hope you get a crack at him. But the other thing that people need to understand is when you say that this is one of the best 3-year-olds that you've ever seen, people got to understand what Smokey was as a 3-year-old. And this deer could be something special.
Well, I think he's every bit as good as Smokey was as a 3-year-old, actually. And I posted, I think, 2 pictures of him, maybe?
Yeah, I think I
posted one picture of him from this year and one from the year ago.
Right.
Well, I've looked at probably 100 pictures of that deer this year from every possible angle. And I tried to pick one that showed him the best, but, I've seen him head on and from the rear and from the side and know exactly what he's got. And that deer, I think he'll hit 170 inches, actually, as a 3-year-old.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
So go to Higgins Outdoors, his blog, and then his Facebook page actually has a post today that's linked over to it. You're going to want to see these pictures of previous, I believe, was it 6 or 7? I can't remember which one it was.
There were 6 of them.
6 bucks. So that he gave a short story with, and hopefully we'll see stories of these unfold as it goes on. So one of the other things we've had going on is the cell camera test. This has turned out to be an overwhelming project that part of me's regretting ever doing, but a lot of people have sent messages over the last couple weeks telling me how much they appreciate what I'm doing, and it's a big investment for people, even the lower price point cameras. And they've been running now a little over 2 weeks in Illinois on the same farm. It's not really a controlled test, if you will. They're basically in different spots that I run trail cameras on. They're not facing the same direction or necessarily. I'm just looking at quality of pictures right now, and I can tell you that I'm not ready to make my final recommendation and ranking of the cameras, because a lot of that's gonna be longevity of the camera, how it works in cold weather. But as far as quality of pictures that I'm getting to my phone or to my computer, I can tell you by far the Wiseye camera is sending better pictures to my device than any other camera. The quality of this camera, this is a family-owned business out of Louisiana. I was not real familiar with them. I saw them at ATA and didn't spend any time with them, and I regret it now. They're a Christian family from down in Louisiana. I believe the owner retired from his normal job as in like computer programming or something, and they started this business. Now family members work there. Great customer service. I did have a question called in, but I'm telling you, Don, the quality of the pictures that I'm getting out of this camera is unbelievable being sent to me. Now, I can't tell you that it's taking every picture. That's going to be a controlled test after the season when I actually get them, lined up, and we're going to put them on basically a football field and drive in front of them with a Quiet Cat bike to, do different speeds at different distances and then do recovery time. And that's going to be all controlled. But as of right now, that camera is the best one in the test. And it's night pictures, great. Daytime pictures, phenomenal. The management tool that they have that all these pictures feed into is unreal. As more pictures start populating the data, it actually sorts pictures and gives you reports based on wind direction, barometric pressure, moon phase. So you can actually see different activity on your farms that if you had multiples of cameras that would feed into it, it'll recognize buck pictures. So if you get, say, 4,000 pictures, it'll sort through them and actually recognize antler. So you can only look through the buck pictures if you want. They have an app that is ready. I heard a couple days ago that they've submitted it to Apple, and they're waiting on Apple to do the final approval to release the app. But right now you just look at it, a mobile website on your phone, and it works the same way, so you can see all your pictures. I think that the Browning and the Exodus are a close tied for second. Both of those two cameras are exactly what I expected of them, the pictures that I get. And you can go back and look. I made a Facebook post every day kind of with a basic review with some sample pictures of it, and I know you've run the Exodus render. Again, I'm just talking about quality of pictures. I would put those two at tied for second. The Tacticam is the one that's getting the most buzz because, you can buy these things for $100. They're not bad pictures, and they seem to be transmitting, but they're not the quality of the other cameras. But it's a $100 camera. I do have some long-term concerns based on the design of the case. I seriously doubt the longevity of this thing, but for people that understand what they're getting out of a $100 camera, it might be fine. But it's not the level of quality of the other three. And I'll try to be as nice as I can. The Stealth Cam and the Spy Point, I wouldn't take them if somebody gave them to me. I'll just be honest with you. It's not a dig on them. There's some good points about both of them. Not many, but there's some good points on them. I mean, I got guys texting me saying, "Oh, you got to download the high def version of the picture." I did, and it's still not very good. So those two are at the bottom of my list so far. So that's kind of where the preliminary ranking is. We're going to use them through hunting season and kind of give feedback of what we learn. I'm especially going to watch it once those temperatures get below freezing. Different things happen with these cameras. And then after the season's over, what we're going to do is we're going to bring them down and put them on a fence post on a big soccer field that's completely flat, all facing the same direction. And at daytime and at night, we're going to drive the Quiet Cat in a straight line at, say, 10 yards, at 15 yards, at 20 yards away from all of the camera at different speeds, and then be able to see what pictures these cameras are missing. But they'll be far enough apart that they won't interfere with each other. But it's going to be a controlled test with something that, the reason I'm going to use the Quiet Cat is because I can drive that thing at 4 miles an hour. I can drive it at 30 to test the shutter speed. So then we'll just do different speeds, a different distance away from the camera. And that'll be the true test of what these lower price point cameras are really doing to pick up, movement and what pictures they get. So,
right.
But there's a couple social media trolls that I get fired up about, but overall, most people are been very grateful at the process and what they're learning from it. I answer 20, 25 questions a day on it. And I'm not ready to give my official response, but that's what I've seen so far. I'm going to end up probably taking a little bit of a shot and maybe buying one or two more of those Wise Eyes for hunting season this year. That's how good those pictures are.
Do they work with either AT&T or Verizon? Or?
Yep. So I'm running all my cameras right now are running Verizon because I've had an AT&T camera in Illinois before. It works here in Kentucky fine, but nothing over there. So I don't have a signal problem with any of the cameras, but I can tell you a couple of them don't send squat, and I know there's deer in front of them. So and the pictures they do send are just garbage. So, but yeah.
You get a camera like that, it actually does more harm than good.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how the cell cam test is going. People have been pretty appreciative of it, but yeah, right now it's not hard to figure out if listeners really want to look at it. $100 price point camera that's sold through a retail store. So think about that for a minute. Wise Eye and Exodus are direct to consumers cameras, right? Every other camera in that test is goes through retail organizations. So Bass Pro, Cabela's, Midway. So there's another level of margin that some company is making on that camera. So you start doing the math and say, okay, well, a $300 camera direct to consumer, that camera they're not making 3 times the margin on that camera that somebody else is. The quality of the hardware and the software and the case, it's all a factor in there. So if there's really a camera that's $100 price point that's going through a retail store, start backing off what the true fixed cost of the components that are in that camera. And right now, the three higher price point cameras are the better pictures. You get what you pay for. But for a lot of people that just want to get into the basic entry level cell camera platform and they're okay with the bookend limitations that they get, it's hands down that Tacticam over the other two cameras. Like I said, if you walked up to me with a box of free cameras of those other two brands, I wouldn't even hang them up. So,
well, speaking of trail cameras, after the last episode, Kevin Thayer sent a message. He didn't, send it through the Chasing Giants, forum where people send their questions to be answered on the podcast. But Kevin sent me on a private message a trail camera question. He wanted to know about bucks avoiding them. If I thought that was a learned behavior, or there's a lot of guys out there using these cameras educating bucks, or what my opinion was. I just think that there's some bucks that are just more wary or whatever than others. We've all seen bucks that, they'll come in front of your camera day after day, and you just get dozens and dozens of pictures of them. And then other bucks, you get one picture and the buck's freaking out. The next picture you got, he's blasted out of the area, and you got him running away,
right,
and never get his picture there again. So I just think that different personalities of different bucks. I think that probably some deer have learned to associate that with humans, and it's probably got as much to do with the scent as anything.
I was getting ready to say it's probably just as much about how much you're going in and checking it, because you get too impatient and not disciplined, and you end up educating them because you're in there too much.
Right. So, I don't think that a deer sees a camera on a tree and automatically thinks, oh, no, somebody's trying to take my picture. I think, for one thing, some of those infrared or whatever, I know you can see it because I can see it in the dark. I can see those things glow red. I've walked by them going in and out of my stand, in the dark.
Right.
And I can see them glow, so I'm sure a deer can. And it's not natural, so obviously they're going to be, spooked or wary or whatever. But I think a lot of it's just the human intrusion into their area.
Yeah.
We keep going back to that, but that saves more bucks than anything.
Well, I know, Kevin's Mr. Food Plot, for those of you who haven't put two and two together of previous episodes, but we talk about Kevin and some of the ideas he has with food plots quite a bit. But it's a great point, and I've even seen it. I'm currently, I don't talk about it too much, but I'm currently looking at a study. I have a 2-acre soybean field that has bedding all the way around it. Literally, there's only one small access point to come in, and there's bedding all around it. So that 2-acre plot, it does have an elevated blind on it, but I'm running, I got to think now, I think I'm running 13 cameras on that 2-acre food plot. And the only reason I'm doing that is I'm plotting where the deer are coming into the plot based on a wind direction to see, and it's just my nerding out about it, but I'm trying to see if a deer's walking into a food plot or scent checking a food plot from the downwind side every time, or if it's just random. But one of the things that I've seen through this study is, I use these T-posts, just metal fence posts, and I wire tie the camera to it.
No, you're using zip tie.
Oh my goodness, I'm going to take grief for that. Little inside joke for everybody if you've listened to a past episode. But I have one camera that's it's screwed to the side of my elevated blind, and the only way you can check it is actually be in the blind and reach in the window to the outside and pull the card out. And I've got pictures of bucks walking through, good grief, 2-foot area around the back side of a camera to get through somewhere when it's open to the other side. And I know they're skirting the backside of that camera. So I've seen it, but I agree with you. I think that every buck's probably a little bit different.
Yeah, I seen years ago, I had a situation on my farm where there was an open gate that led from the bedding cover to the food source. And, a big farm gate, and the deer would walk right through that open gate to get to the food. And I, of course, had a trail camera covering that gate because the deer traffic was pinched down right there. Sitting in my stand overlooking that gate one time, here comes a buck, and what's he do? He moves about 20 yards from that gate and jumps the fence. He's coming right down the same trail.
He could have walked through the open gate.
Yeah, but once he got close to that gate, he avoided it, and he went through the thick brush and jumped the fence. He was not coming through there, and I know it was because of the trail camera.
Wow.
But because he was following some does and fawns, and right down the trail, they came right on through the open gate. And I would have swore he was going to do the same thing, but nope, he veered off about 20 yards and jumped the fence and then went right out into the same plot they were in.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Before we move on to the Biofarm segment, I do have one update that I wanted to share with everybody. I actually picked up my muzzleloader today. So we've talked about this custom muzzleloader that I was having built. It's actually done by Higgins Custom Rifles, who bought a CNC machine from me from my day job, and it ended up being part of the deal that I worked out with him. Is he bought the machine, but I had to buy a rifle. Unfortunately, he did not give me the level discount on the rifle that I gave him on the machine, but that's okay. For those of you who are curious, this is just something that I've always been interested in, was long-range muzzleloader shooting. They got competitions where you're shooting muzzleloaders, out to 500 yards. Really, really cool. But I picked up mine today. He mounted a Vortex Viper scope on it and did the preliminary dial-in of it, and at 100 yards he was hitting the same bullet hole with it. So, and that's shooting I believe he was shooting a 350 grain bullet at about 3,100 feet per second. So this thing's going to be a pretty cool project. So for those of you who are wondering about that project, I've been posting a couple things on my social media. I think we're going to try to blow up some tobacco skull cans with tannerite in it from about 400 yards and see if I can hit them. I think that'll be pretty cool.
Well, if you miss a deer this year with that gun, then you can't blame the gun, right?
Well, I don't know that I'm hunting with that gun, but this is just something I've always been interested in, and Vortex being a sponsor of the show, we obviously put Vortex glass on it, and but this thing's pretty cool. I mean, Don, it's not I wouldn't even consider this a gun you could pack into the field. The barrel diameter is probably about the size of a baseball bat where you put your hands around it. So, I mean, it's if I do hunt with it, it's going to be up in a blind somewhere where I got a bench vise of some sort. This isn't necessarily something that you would go hunt with. This is a long range target gun, but a very cool piece of equipment that I'm excited about, and this Vortex scope is pretty killer on it. So if you are interested in that, just head over to social media and look it up. So do you got anything else before we do buyfarm.com?
No, I don't think so. I think we're ready to move on.
All right, so we're going to transition to the buyfarm.com property of the week.
Buyafarm.com is your source for farm, recreational properties, rural homes, and more. Now, here is Don Higgins with this week's featured property.
Terry, we've featured some pretty unique properties on this segment, but I think this one is probably the most unique. We're actually, their Biofarm is actually auctioning an island in the Mississippi River.
What?
And this is not a little island either. This island is 445 acres.
You're kidding me.
273 acres, that's woodland with marketable timber. I'm not sure how I would get it out of there, but I'm sure there's ways. The Browns Bar, it's way down in southern Illinois. It's actually 22 miles south of Missouri.
All right, Don, your cell phone breaking up a little bit, so I don't know if you're moving around, but you said that, what was that last thing that you said for me? I just don't want people to miss this.
Yeah, the location of this island is 22 miles south of Cape Girardeau, Missouri.
Okay.
There on the Mississippi River. And you're not going to believe the taxes on this 445-acre island. The taxes are $45.48 a year.
Well, I'm guessing if it's an island, there's not taxes to pay trash pickup, is there?
I would guess not, but and probably no. Who knows?
No fire department, ambulance service. I don't know.
You wouldn't think, but I think it is Illinois. It says Miller City, Illinois.
Right.
So you know how the state of Illinois is. They're going to get their hands in everything they can, but still, at only $45 a year, you're not going to find much lower taxes than that. And
yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's actually an online auction, and the bidding closes September 17th, so there's only, about 10 more days or so
right.
To bid on this. If you got any questions, the agent is Mark Kennedy, and Mark's phone number is 618-924-8255. 1747. And he can give you all the details. He doesn't live all that far from there. But if you ever dreamed about owning your own island, and I talked to Mark about this, and the price is going to be very reasonable. I mean, this is not going to be, a high dollar per acre parcel.
Right. There's going to be very few people that would be interested in this, but for the right recreation property, this thing would be awesome.
Absolutely, and it's going to be pretty cheap too. So if you're interested, call Mark. Go to the Buy a Farm website. There's photos. There's drone footage over the island, so you get a good feel for it.
All right, that's fantastic, and we appreciate Buy a Farm for their support of the podcast. But they've gotten quite a few good leads from our listeners, so we hope that we keep bringing properties that are have interest to the outdoorsmen and help them out a little bit in return. So before we move on, I haven't even told you this yet, but our last episode 28, set another record with downloads. So we just want to thank everybody. The podcast is just starting to take crazy traction, and you guys supporting us and listening to us. We're just regular guys, trying to tell a little bit of what's going on in our lives and our passion for hunting, but we try to keep it as real as possible. We really don't have another agenda out of this whole thing, do we?
No, not at all. Just, one of the best things that happens to me is when someone kills the biggest buck of their life and they say, I owe this buck to something I read in one of your articles or something I heard in a seminar or something I heard on your podcast or whatever. So, we've been blessed, and we're just trying to help others along the way.
Yeah, I got this private message on Instagram earlier actually it was Sunday, because it was after I posted that I actually accomplished my goal and was in the woods. And somebody was sent me a message, and they've been in the hospital for like 40 days straight. And he said, "You're an inspiration." And I'm like, whoa. And I don't want to be the Charles Barkley, I'm not a role model type thing. But, it's just pretty cool that people can relate to our stories. We're not driving around in an RV hunting outfitters and being set up on these deer we're trying to kill. We're both doing what every one of our listeners can do, to be quite honest with you. There's not one thing that we're doing that somebody else couldn't do. And it's just nice that our listeners are relating to our story. I think that's just pretty cool.
Yeah, and speaking of that, Terry, before we get into the submitted questions, there was a question submitted right after we did the podcast on the hunting industry and getting into the hunting industry, and you and I shared our stories from two different angles. But somebody had submitted a question. They wanted to hear, my personal story, not just how I got into the hunting industry, but how I became so obsessed with whitetails, and how I was able to purchase my own property, and they wanted to hear the other side of the story besides just the hunting industry. And I searched for that submitted question, and I remember it because as soon as I read it, I was like, I'm going to use that one day. I'm kind of set it aside, and I set it aside somewhere where I can't find it. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit because somebody else brought that up on social media here a couple weeks ago.
Right.
They wanted to hear the story, and I think it might have been Brent Davis.
Good guy.
Lives here in Illinois.
Yep.
But or maybe he was responding to somebody else who'd said the same thing. But so anyway, I'm going to kind of go into some of my story, just to kind of show that we really are real world deer hunters. We're not hunting those prime properties and everything. But when I was a kid, I was just crazy about the outdoors. Anything that there was a season for, I was either hunting, fishing, trapping for it, or whatever. And I got my first shotgun when I was 13 years old. For my 13th birthday, I got a single shot 20 gauge shotgun, and I was hard on the small game around our small town. I mean, that's all I did. I quit going out for sports in school because I wanted to run home after school and grab that shotgun and go hunting all fall and winter. And that's what I did. And the white-tailed deer population in our part of central Illinois was just starting to get to huntable numbers. And I mean, it was pretty rare to see a deer or even see deer tracks, but there was some around, and as rare as they were, there was a season. So I wanted to hunt those. So when I was 14, I talked my dad into letting me apply for a shotgun deer permit. And, I got one, and so I started hunting deer at 14, and then my third season, when I was 16, I shot my first deer, a 9-point buck. And when I walked up on that deer, it's like my whole world changed because, I mean, I knew at that moment that's what I was going to be doing the rest of my life. And by the time I was in my early 20s, I'd given up just about all other outdoor interest and pursuits to focus on deer. But to back up a little bit, in my personal story, I graduated high school in 1981, and I absolutely hated school when I was in school. There was no way that I was going to pay somebody to do the same thing for 4 more years and go to college. I just wasn't going to do it. I hated school that much, and I got a job. It was a good job at the time at a local factory, and it paid well. And so when I was there, I met a gentleman named Alan Foster, who was doing what I dreamed about doing. He was shooting good deer on a consistent basis, and I think God brings certain people into our lives at certain points, and I know that He brought Al into my life at that point because I was getting old enough then that I wasn't going out hunting with my dad anymore, but I was still young enough that I needed that mentor type person to keep me on the right track. I could have easily fallen, and been one of those, if it's brown, it's down, kill them at all costs type hunters. But Al was very ethical and preached ethics to me on almost a daily basis on that job. So, that was a godsend there. But, at that time I had a girlfriend, and she ended up coming up pregnant, and we got married, tried to do the right thing, but it didn't last long. So we was married about a year or so and got divorced. So, I found myself, in my early 20s, working a job at a factory and paying child support. And that was, I dug myself a pretty big hole at a pretty young age. So after I got divorced, I met my current wife, and a couple of years later we got married. And then 2 years after we got married, actually it was on our second anniversary, we brought our daughter home from the hospital. So she was born 2 days before our second anniversary. So there I was, with 2 girls and a wife, and struggling to get by. And I remember when my wife and I were first married that the bills would pile up, and there'd be a stack of bills on the kitchen table, 3 inches tall, and I'd bring my paycheck home, and there's no way we could pay a quarter of them. And that's not counting taking money out for groceries. And there was more than once that we had our electricity shut off because we just didn't have the money to pay the electric bill. And back then, before cell phones, you had home phones, and there was more than once our home phone got shut off because we didn't have the money to pay it. It was a lot of times it was either groceries or pay a bill, and we had to have the groceries to eat. And I remember a lot of times I'd get my paycheck from work, and I would run to the bank on my lunch hour to deposit that check because we'd written checks a day or two ahead that were going to bounce if I didn't get that check in there. So, these guys that think that, I've always had things the easy way and didn't have to struggle for what I got. No idea. I've been as poor as anyone you probably ever met, but we just kept plugging away, and slowly got on our feet. And then when I was about 30 years old or so, my grandparents had a small farm just outside of town where we lived. And my grandpa passed away when I was 29 years old, and a year or two later, my grandmother did. And I wanted to buy that, and they only had 30 acres on this farm, but my grandpa had it set up in his will that I had first choice to buy it because none of the other grandkids had an interest. So my wife and I, we sold our place in town and bought this farm and moved out here and kind of built it from there. But to back up a little bit, when my wife and I bought a home in town, it was not at the country club or anything like that. It was a rundown place that needed a lot of work. We paid $12,500 for our first home. And over the next few years, we worked on that home and remodeled it, and one room at a time. And it was about one room a year was about all we could afford to remodel. And then when we ended up selling it, we ended up getting $40,000 for it. So, we did a lot of work to build up the equity, and then was able to sell that and buy this 30 acres. When we bought the 30, it was almost like a square 40 with one quarter 10 acres missing. Well, that missing 10 acres was actually in part of a trust that was overseen by the bank where we banked. And when I went to them for the loan for the 30 acres in the farm, I asked them about buying that 10 acres to give us a square 40. And I guess God was looking out for me again because they agreed to break that 10 acres off from the rest of the farm that they overseen and allowed me to have a square 40. And that's what we started with. And at the time we was raising some beef cattle on the farm, and that wasn't paying off so well. It was about a break-even deal every year. Decided to sign it up for the CRP program and turn it into deer habitat. And at the time, there was no deer on this farm. And when we started, I just thought, man, maybe one day I can turn this place into something good enough where there'll be a handful of deer here, and never had any idea what it would turn into. Reality has so far surpassed any dream I had back then that it's just totally unreal. But that's how we started. Then a few years later, had an opportunity to buy another piece of property that was about a half hour from us, but we was going to be able to sign it up for CRP the day that we closed on it, and we purchased it with a mortgage where we made one annual payment. Well, the CRP payment was going to make our annual payment, which made it a no-brainer. So we had that property for a few years, and then we had a chance to buy another piece of ground that butted right up to our 40 that we lived on. So we sold the piece that we had bought and signed up for CRP and added to the 40 we got, and that's what we've got now. But just been working on that for years to turn it into, a deer paradise. And the reason I share that story is, again, people think that I must have been born with property or whatever, but we made a lot of sacrifices along the way. I mean, I didn't buy new vehicles. I never bought motorcycles or truck or boats or, things like that a lot of other people did. I was focused on having a hunting farm. And I truly feel that after what I went through to acquire what I've got today, if I can do it, anybody can, because I didn't fall into a bunch of money or anything like that. I struggled every step of the way. For a lot of years I had that factory job, and I was paying as much in child support as what I was paying on that payment for that 40 acres. In fact, I was paying more in child support than what I was paying on the payment for that 40 acres. So, I mean, if I can do that and own land, I don't think anybody else has really got an excuse. Right. Most people can find a way if they want to. But, I don't know if that was the question that was submitted, if that's the story that the person wanted to hear or not. But that's kind of my personal story, out of high school and how I ended up acquiring a hunting property.
Yeah, pretty cool story, and we've said before, we know a lot of people in the hunting industry, and the people that have money in this industry, most of them did not make it the money in this industry. So for the people that are sponsor chasing and sponsor whores and saying whoever pays me, it's tough. You're not going to do it. The people that are wealthy most likely did not make it in this industry. The people that have the stories like Don has, because they worked their tail off and sacrificed to do it. I've sat at your kitchen table and seen the sacrifices that both you and your wife Robin have made for this passion of yours, and talked about it openly, and respect you guys a whole lot for it. It's not something that's come easy, that's for sure.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, Terry. Having a supporting spouse is huge, because I know there's a lot of women that would be having a fit that I was buying hunting land and instead of building a new house or something. Still hope to build a new house one day, but my wife hasn't got one yet. So she sacrificed right along with me for this hunting land, and never held me back, one bit. So a supporting spouse is a big part of the equation if that's your dream.
Yeah. So we're not getting into my story. Actually, for the listeners that care, the TV show Whitetail Cribs is actually coming to my house on Thursday this week to film. So if you're curious about my story and kind of my spin on the different side of it, we'll post a link to that when it gets published. So I guess do you have one more question that we're going to talk about tonight, since we spent a lot of time on that one?
I got a couple of questions.
All right.
We got time for two, or
let's go with one, see how long it takes us.
Okay. The first question comes from Derek Hammond from Chillicothe, Illinois. Derek says, it seems as if every magazine, TV show, and YouTube video tells hunters to get back to the dark reaches of a property to get a big buck. Some, but not all, say this is in regards to getting to deer where the hunting pressure isn't. Specifically for smaller landowners, is this a good strategy? It seems to me the information that I've learned from you is it's smarter to hunt areas that leave those less pressured areas to the deer, and especially if you're hunting over food, to pull the deer towards you. I'm asking because the property I just acquired was mixed pasture and timber, and the previous owners had stands scattered here and there, walking right through a deer's living room and bedroom, and it seems wrong when I can hunt them in a hallway or the kitchen. Thanks for the podcast. Yeah, Derek, I think you're on the right track, and you probably answered your own question. I know the answer. The heart of the property, you need to hunt the property without putting human pressure on it. When I go on a consulting visit, one of the first things I tell the client is, if you want to consistently kill mature deer, you got to hunt them where they spend their daylight hours, and that means where they bed. And I think too many people just go out without a real plan in mind as they hunt a property. They don't consider their access route. They don't consider where the deer are coming from or where they're going to. But you need to consider all that. And going back into the dark reaches of a property, as you put it, is generally not the best approach. Hunt the edges with easy to access stands, and you'll be a whole lot better off.
I'm going to go a little bit different direction with this, but the other thing that really drives me bonkers is people that give set advice when in reality we just have to understand that every property is different. And what I mean by that is we can say, have your sanctuaries, don't pressure, don't go back into the thick stuff, minimize intrusion. But every property is a little bit different, and different people's hunting style sets up more effectively for those properties. And an example of this is Don's home farm and my home farm. They're within size-wise of probably 10 acres of each other. But Don, your farm's how many acres? Is it right at 100?
Yeah, it's just a little more than 100. It's almost 120.
Okay, so mine's just a little bit smaller than yours. Yours hunts bigger because your core is in the center and you have open ag around you. My home farm is exactly opposite. I have wood funnels and hollers all the way around mine with one big open area in the center. So they're set up completely inverse. So when Derek, my only reason of bringing this up is when you're listening to people's advices or you're on these YouTube or magazine articles, what you have to understand is if somebody says, do this XYZ to the exact, one property from another might be completely different and that not work. You have to stay at it's like Don's master class. You have to really simplify it, and what are those goals and what is those plans, and then how does that apply to your property. And how I hunt my farm is completely different than how Don hunts his farm because he can access it from different directions with different winds. Tonight I had to stand at the barn because unless I have a westerly wind, I can't even get in there effectively. It's a great farm to hunt, but I'm minimized in how I can hunt it. So just be careful is my only point when you get the YouTube advice, the land consultants' advice, especially the land consultants that's never killed anything bigger than a 120, which seems to be most of them these days. You know, take that advice and apply the grand scheme of things of how do I minimize pressure, how do I identify bedding area, and how do I get my food and line these all up for how my property lays, because every property is going to be a little bit different. If somebody's offering you foolproof advice that's cookie cutter for every single property in the country, I would question it.
Yeah, that's a good point, Terry, and a good angle. Good input.
So just the bottom line is it's like you talk about in your master classes. You have to really step back and say, it's really simple. Now it's how do I apply this simple thing to your property? And that's where the secret sauce is, right? It's how do I take any property and apply this simple strategy to it? It doesn't have to be real complicated. It's how you lay it out on a specific property.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, let's do one more. We got time for one more.
Sounds good. I really wanted to do this one anyway. This one comes from David Llewellyn from Blue Mound, Illinois. David says, Don and Terry, I'd first like to thank you for putting out this podcast and the overwhelming amount of knowledge and information that is packed in each episode. As a beginning hunter this year, what are the key tips that you would go back and teach yourselves from the very start? You talk about scent control, hunting with the right wind. Along these same lines, what do you do to keep your scent down? Not just to and from the stand, but also from your house to wherever it is you're hunting that day. I see ads all the time for products from Scent Crusher and the like, and I can't help but truly wonder if they make any difference. If a deer can smell as good as you say it does, is a little plug in Scent Crusher actually getting rid of a scent? And last but not least, doe estrus urine. Do you ever use it when hunting the rut to help draw in these giant bucks? Again, thank you for your time. As a deputy for Macon County, I look forward to every podcast and replaying them while out patrolling the county. Well, David, first of all, the reason I selected your question is because you are a deputy sheriff, and law enforcement officers around the country are just getting hammered from every angle by these radical groups. And I wanted to take the opportunity to say how much I appreciate your law enforcement, whether it be a state police officer or a county deputy like yourself, city police officer, a conservation officer, game warden, whatever. You guys do a tough job. You put your lives on the line. And for a bunch of idiots to disrespect you, I think is just totally wrong. And I want you to know that in no uncertain terms that I fully support you and respect the job that you do. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. I can't say
now
it any
to get
better.
into your question.
Can't say it any better myself, but thank you for what you do for your local community, sir.
Absolutely. What do I do to keep my scent down? I play the wind, and that's it. Now, you're going to find that hard to believe, but my cameraman, Steve Shields, who's been here doing a lot of filming with me this summer for my YouTube videos, he made a comment the other day that he is shocked at how little I pay attention to scent control. That, he's been with some of, filming for some of the biggest names in the industry, and they all are real conscious about their scent. Well, the thing of it is, if your scent is blowing towards an animal, he's going to smell you. And I really don't care what you've done ahead of time. There's going to be guys that disagree with me, and that's fine. They can disagree, but just from my experience, and I used to do it all. I'm telling you, I did everything that you possibly could, and it didn't matter. When the deer got downwind of me, they still smelled me. And I just figured at some point, I've got to learn to play the wind to my advantage. I got to set my stands, where my scent is not going to blow, or is very unlikely to blow, where the deer are going to be and be able to scent me. And for me, it's all about the wind. I mean, a buck utilizes the wind to his advantage anyway. Even if you could remain 100% scent free, a buck is just not going to waltz around and commit suicide and forget about the wind. It's his number one defense. He's just not going to do that. So believe it or not, that's all I do. I just watch the wind. I'll wash my clothes one time right before hunting season.
Yeah, but you're oversimplifying it a little bit. You're not one of these guys that wear their hunting clothes. People wearing their Sitka into Waffle House or Steak and Shake, sitting there eating a cheeseburger. You're not to that point. I mean, you're still changing your clothes and not wearing them around, and not smoking, and doing all the stupid stuff with your camo. But at the same time, you're not running ozone in the truck with you and trying to do all the gimmick stuff. But don't make it sound like you're going in there smelling like a big cow turd either.
No, but I'm not spraying down with anything.
Yeah.
I wash my clothes once at the beginning of season. That's it. I do keep them in a tote, and I change every time I go hunting. I'm trying to keep foreign odors off of them, but I'm not near as radical as right. most other deer hunters. But
you, like I said, you do have some sense of caring about it. It's just I think you're going at it as you're not saying that the running ozones or spraying down scent or cover scent or anything like that is giving you an edge. You're playing the wind, but we do pay precautions.
Yeah, and one time this question came up in a seminar, and I said, so I responded with a question. I said, how many in here use some sort of scent control method, whether it be sprays or, the scent control clothing or something? How many in here use something like that? Every hand in the room went up. And I said, how many of you have been, okay, you can put your hands down. How many of you have had a deer smell you and blow? Every hand went up. So everybody's using this stuff, and they're still getting winded.
Right.
And but if a deer's not downwind of you, he can't smell you.
Yeah, I think the bottom line in that question that comes up a lot, I mean, we get that question a lot, is if you want to use all that stuff, have at it. I don't think it's going to hurt you. But if you're hunting the wrong wind and you're accessing the stand with the wrong wind, it doesn't matter what you use. You're going to get busted the majority of the time, and sometimes you're not even going to know that you are busted. It's like if I would have hunted tonight with every single scent product known to man, my scent would have blown into that bedding area, and most likely those bucks didn't come out on the field. So,
yep.
I mean, if you want to spend the money and put into all that kind of stuff, have at it. I don't think, and the ozone people might yell at me for this, but I don't like breathing that stuff. I actually got one of the scent crusher bags for Christmas one year, and I plugged it in here in the basement with some camo in it, and I guess I didn't have it zipped up all the way, and I got lightheaded. So I can't imagine running one of them things in a vehicle with me in it. I personally don't want to breathe this stuff, but He had another question at the beginning of what you read. What was that before we got into the scent stuff? Was it lessons learned or something?
What are the key tips that you would go back and teach yourselves from the very start?
All right. So what's the one thing early in your hunting career? I may be spinning off his question a little bit, that you wished you could tell yourself if you could go back and.
Well, and we already hit on it at least once already on this podcast. It seems like we hit on it every episode. It's human intrusion.
Yeah.
Human intrusion is so detrimental to your success. I burned out so many properties when I was young and learning, and I'm still learning. Don't get me wrong, but in my early days, I would burn out properties every season, and it didn't really take that long. In a couple of weeks of hard hunting, you can just totally burn out a property. Go from seeing deer every hunt to not seeing anything.
Right.
And it's all about human intrusion, and I think that's the big lesson that young hunters they just don't get it. And it doesn't matter if you tell them, they still don't seem to get it. Because that human intrusion has got to be kept to an absolute minimum to have a chance at the big guys.
Right. I guess if I could tell myself or a young hunter something, it's enjoy the process. There's so much social media with all these forums and different groups telling you how to hunt, what to shoot, what not to shoot. Enjoy learning how to hunt if you're just starting this journey. It's really crazy that hunting has become the only hobby or sport where these people want you to go from just starting to passing to a 5-year-old every year. I mean, if you're a fisherman, you don't get by your first rod and reel and then go enter into a professional tournament without a boat. You don't learn, start playing golf and start, you're not going to play Augusta National at scratch. There's no other hobby that you can start that you're all of a sudden at the top of the game killing mature bucks every year. And the pressure that social media and people in this community put on young hunters to go from 0 to 60 without learning how to hunt drives me bonkers. So if you're starting out on this journey and you're just learning, have fun with it. It's okay to set goals, set realistic goals for you and your property, stick to them, but enjoy learning to hunt. This is a great sport and an awesome place to enjoy God's creation, but doggone it, you can't fall into and put pressure on yourself like these people want you to.
Keep it fun for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
His last question was, and last but not least, doe estrus urine. Do you ever use it when hunting the rut to help draw in these giant bucks? No, I don't. I have in the past. I've never had it draw in a big buck for me to shoot. I think scents are overrated. I think they've got their place for sure. I'll use them on my rope scrapes and such for taking inventory. But when it comes right down to hunting, I really don't use scents for hunting. How about you, Terry?
I've used them in the past. The more I've focused my rut hunting away from drawing a buck in to being in the right place in a rut, I guess you just have to look at it a different way. What you taught me how to do years ago in hunting the downwind side of bedding areas, that's where your bucks are at. And if you find the place on your property and you're disciplined enough to only hunt it in the right conditions, and in the rut you get on that downwind side of that bedding area, you don't need doe and estrus urine.
Nope.
I don't know that I've ever seen a buck spook by it. I've had a buck come across it, put his nose down and not lift his nose up. But I've started to rely on being in the right place versus trying to draw a buck in by calling or scent, if that makes sense. If you're in the right spot, you're in the right spot.
That's a good way to put it.
So
you need to get to the right spot without doing anything to alert that buck that you're there.
Right.
So to put that scent out, you gotta walk to the spot and you gotta hang it from a tree branch or whatever. And when you do that, you're leaving human scent on the ground. I don't care what anybody says. I think you're just a lot better off to be in the right spot and slip in there as quietly and without disturbing anything as you possibly can.
Yeah. So just my take on it. I'm getting further away from it's like we talked about in a past episode. I don't carry rattling horns with me anymore. I just focus on trying to be in the right spot. And there's people that have success with it, and that's good for them if that's their technique. But
Yep.
I will take being in the right spot over an arsenal of every product known to man any day of the week.
Well, everybody seems to be looking for a gimmick or a gadget to make up for lack of hunting skills, and that's really what it is. Instead of spending your money on those gadgets and gimmicks, spend your time sharpening your hunting skills, and in the end, it's going to pay off with bigger bucks for sure.
I think so. All right. So, hopefully here, I'm not sure how long it'll take for the tour of my house and trophy room to be uploaded, but I hope when we post it, all you guys go out and watch the Whitetail Cribs episode. We're going to kind of touch back a little bit on my story and the journey of some of the deer. I got some pretty interesting stories that you guys will laugh at, and one of them is shooting a deer off the top of a Budweiser beer truck, so that's a little teaser for the story that'll be on that episode. So what else you got cooking this month? You said you're going out of state the next couple of days to look at a lead. I'm going to wait for a west wind and go try to kill a 12-pointer.
Well, you'll get it done. You always do. So just a matter of how long it's going to take. Will it be the first week or the second week?
I don't know. So
it usually don't take you too long.
Hope not. That way we can focus on Illinois here this year. So
yeah.
You got anything else before we head out for this episode?
No, I think that's it for this time.
Well, we want to obviously thank buyfarm.com, but most of all, we want to thank all the listeners. You guys have been very supportive, extremely gracious with your comments and messages that you send us. I mean, the listener-submitted questions are just a portion of it. The message that Don and I get every day thanking us for doing this, it makes it worth it on our side. So we want to thank everybody and just please share them with your friends. If you're listening to it on like Apple Podcast or Spotify or iHeartRadio, give us a ranking and a review on there. That helps other people that search for hunting podcasts to find it. And then we also want you to go to Higgins Outdoors YouTube channel. The last video we had post was a really popular, and it was a how-to for your rope scrapes. And had a lot of people look at that. Do you have one coming out this week?
Yeah, if Steve gets it done, which he should.
Okay.
I just talked to him today, and so by the end of the week we should have another one up.
Okay.
But the last one on creating rope scrapes to take inventory of bucks was the most watched video we've had yet. So we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, so go to Higgins Outdoors YouTube channel. Also check out that blog that he just wrote with those other pictures on Higgins Outdoors. Obviously, ChasingGiants.com will lead you to the same place. So before Don takes everybody out, again, we didn't really do a lot of ranting tonight. We're just excited that hunting season is here or close, and really grateful for all of the listeners. So thanks for everything. Don's going to take us out.
All right, we want to thank our sponsors, buyafarm.com, 360 Hunting Blinds, Quiet Cat, Real World Wildlife Products, Vortex Optics, Lone Wolf Stands, and Matthews Archery. Appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll see you next episode. Stay safe.
Take care.